take a minute to fill out our brief post-event survey. And today's session will run about 45 minutes with 5 minutes at the end reserved for Q&A. And if you need help during the session, feel free to message me directly into the chat. And now to introduce our speakers. Ed Berry is the co-founder and chief product officer at Treasury 4. Ed brings a rare blend of operational treasury expertise and product innovation. Before co-founding Treasury 4, he built global treasury function at Tableau Software and supported its acquisition by Salesforce. He also held treasury leadership roles at Microsoft. Ed leads with the design of intelligent tools that solve visibility, risk, and forecasting challenges with real-world practicality. And introducing Ty, she is our business intelligence engineer at Treasury 4 with a background in mathematics and computer science. She specializes in building scalable dashboards and data infrastructure to support real-time, intuitive insights. And introducing Randy DeVita, he's our VP of Customer Success at Treasury 4. Randy brings over 20 years of experience leading professional services and implementation teams. At Treasury 4, he ensures clients gain maximum value from the platform, from onboarding to long-term adoption. Just to quickly go through the agenda, I just gave the introductions and panelist spotlights. Then we'll go into some scalable platforms, robust cash flow categorization, intelligent applied AI models, and some Q&A. First, I'm going to go ahead and share the results from the registration form that you guys gave in the end. In the beginning of filling out the form on the page when you guys first registered. And I'm going to tee it off to our lovely speakers to speak on the responses from this question.
Great. Thanks, Emily. I'll go ahead and start. This is Ed Berry, and the Chief Product Officer here. And I've been a Treasury practitioner for over 20 years, and I'm not surprised at the responses here in the poll in terms of what technologies are being used by the attendees to drive forecasting with spreadsheets or Excel, the number one tool. I know I've used Excel extensively for cash flow forecasting across all the companies that I've previously worked at, and even during my time at Tableau, still managing data in Excel, but then leveraging Tableau's own product as a business intelligence tool to overlay that. So not really anything here that is surprising, other than what I see is the opportunity to apply more data-driven technology solutions to help enable forecasting. Ty, Randy, any thoughts you'd like to add to this?
As the one thing
totally.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'll jump in real quick, is not surprised either. And for all the customers that we're working with, they're coming off of Excel. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a lot of sympathy for everyone that's doing forecasting in Excel. I know that those spreadsheets tend to get very complicated very quickly and are super difficult to maintain. And if one of the few people who understand the report leaves the company, then the report becomes useless. So a lot of sympathy there.
For sure. I think that the challenge with Excel is that, first of all, I think it's the number one treasury management platform out there is spreadsheets. Infinitely flexible, but also constrained in being able to look at things like comparing one forecast versus another or historical data. And just, being able to really have a scalable platform to drive your forecasting, your forecasting needs for your organization, and to be able to look at data however you need to look at it, but also the ability to bring in additional data sets beyond what you traditionally might have be using for forecasting. So maybe switching to the next slide here and thinking about just perspectives in forecasting, I would say my experience is that it's really always a top 3 treasury issue. Whatever any surveys coming out for treasury teams, what are your top 5 or top 8 items that you're focused on for a given year? Cash flow forecasting is always in the top 3. I would say by and large, most CFOs are never truly happy with their cash flow forecast, which then means that Treasury is never happy, and there's always room for improvement, driving more precision, more effective understanding. And one of the challenges is understanding your actuals versus your forecasts, identifying what those variances were, and how do you better understand them and learn from them to improve the future forecasting that you're driving. And so I think those are key items to keep in mind there. Next slide, Emily. So I think, a couple of the big problem statements here around cash flow forecasting is Treasury teams are really challenged to have, a hub of all of that data, having consistent data around it. I think cash forecasting by and large is both a data issue. How do I get more access to more and more data, but put the right definition around the data? And Randy and Ty will talk about categorization and the importance of that. And that's really the definition of all those inflows and outflows. And so that then you can, as a Treasury team, adequately plan for your cash needs for the organization and explain to the different stakeholders, the number one stakeholder being the CFO. And I think it's really important to understand that from a CFO's perspective, what are they most interested in understanding in terms of their cash flow forecast? And I would say it's not necessarily what's the AP forecast or payroll forecast, but it's really what is the operating cash flow forecast? How are my actuals trending to that? And then what is my free cash flow forecast and how are my actuals trending to that? Because that's what the CFO typically is looking at. And then being able to drill down into those component parts and then being able to communicate clearly to the CFO what your forecast was for a given time period, what your actuals were, and what that variance is, and being able to attribute to that and then explain it and then be able to drive improvements around that. Ty, Randy, any thoughts that you'd like to share, and especially as you've engaged with different customers and using cash flow forecasting?
Sure, I'll start. It's from my point of view, in working with customers, it is like you described, it's data, and really we think of it in three different things we're trying to solve with data. So that Ty and the tools that she's built into the system can do their work is one is automating the data that the organizations are using. So that's crucial. We don't want it to be manual. We want the data to flow in an automatic way. But in addition to that, we definitely want to ensure that when we're getting that data into the platform, the data is, we're getting a lot of the data. So one of the things that we really try to focus on to have an impact with customers early is to load in as much history as they're entitled to with banks. We've found that even up to 2 years of data, and then you can recognize trends and seasonality. And then, automating the data and getting enough of it, enriching the data, putting that business definition around the data, the customer's business definition, not ours, so that all of the sort of machine learning, the analytics can work in giving insights in terms of what we predict to happen in the future.
Jerry, I think you really hit a couple of key items there too, in terms of the value of historical data. And I think one of the analogies that we kind of have two analogies that we like to use around the value of historical data. One is instead of waiting, and Randy coined this, but instead of waiting for 2 years for the swimming pool to be filled with data, if you can fill that in a day or two, in a few days with 2 years of history, now you have something to work with. And I think the other analogy in terms of cash forecasting is being a traffic forecaster. If you're able to forecast all the flows back and forth on the freeway and break it down by make and model and even color of car, you can really drive a lot more intuitive understanding and measurement around that. And the key to all of that is data, having as much historical data as possible in those business definitions around it. And I think that business definition is really important, especially in the age of AI, because the technology can take advantage and leverage those definitions more effectively. So with that said, I think we will turn it over to Randy to lead us through our demo today.
Oh, cool. Okay. You're with me.
And Emily might need to, yeah, there we go.
Yeah, no, we've got it.
Yeah, I just gave you
That's
access.
Perfect.
Waited. Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
So I'll maybe just walk through at a high level what is here in the reporting tool, because I think these are a lot of things that we're talking through, and this is a reporting, a forecast, entity forecast report that we're using with our customers and learning from, but it's taking advantage of a few things. It's taking advantage of actual bank data that comes in. So these are actuals that are flowing in from the customers banking different banks, and those transactions are being, like we talked about, enriched. So we're categorizing these transactions, what's accounts receivable, what's accounts payable, and so on. So we're applying that business definition to those transactions. But those transactions that we're bringing in as well we have forecasts for. And so by applying a business definition to enough historical data, we're able to produce predictions and model what we expect is going to happen in the future. Maybe, Ty, that might not be a bad time, just kind of chime in a little bit on how we're leveraging, and I'll kind of interact with the report a little bit, but how we're leveraging the data that we've collected, how we've enriched it. And I would just say real quick is in going through the process of enriching enough historical data from customers, we're really able to have impactful conversations with them early about how we should be categorizing things in order to sort of do the forecasting they're looking to do. Can you talk a little bit about, like, from a model point of view, what's happening, what we should be thinking about?
Yeah, totally. So because we're loading in so much historical data and we're using a rule engine to then categorize all of our data, you go from 0 to forecast pretty quick with us. And as most people are aware, no forecasting algorithm is going to be a perfect match for every data set. So we've kind of adopted a mix and match approach to our forecasting. So we have machine learning models through neural networks, traditional statistical forecasting models like rolling averages, and manual forecasts because no one knows your data better than you. So you can mix and match these algorithms at any granularity. You can do it like Randy's showing right now by cash flow type. So that categorization, you can do it at the entity level. You can do it at the currency level. And then we're going to aggregate all of your choices of which model to use for which groups into a high level accurate forecast. So it kind of appeals to both the CFO who wants just a general overview, and then it also helps the treasurers who want to really drill into those details and understand what's happening. And I like to explain a little bit about how machine learning works because I think it's very cool. And so what's happening in these machine learning models is we're having a neural network, which exactly like it sounds is a team of neurons. And that team is going to learn pretty similar to how we learn. It's going to look for patterns and it's going to practice guessing and learning from its mistakes. And they're going to do it over and over again, way faster than any of us ever could, until it knows the ins and outs of those data patterns. So your cash flows. So we're also recording all of the parts of this process. So we have auditable records of what's happening, assumptions that are being made, how fast that team of neurons is learning, and we can optimize how it learns. So then we are dedicating a neural network per category, entity, and currency. So not only do you have one team of neurons, but most of our customers end up with hundreds of teams of neurons that are learning their data and forecasting it for them. Randy, if you want to go into a little bit how people are interacting with these forecasts, I think that would be lovely.
Yeah, no, sorry, that's helpful. And I think part of what I want to show here is not just the presentation of the data and sort of the analyzing the information, but how you get there. The big portion of the majority of the machine learning relies on customers applying a business definition, their own business definition to the transactions and having enough transaction data to be able to recognize patterns. So this is where, just for an example, a transaction, I'm able to interact with these transactions and I can drill into any one of these transactions and at least show what we're doing. So behind the scenes, what's happening is all of the data that's coming is in an automated way from the bank, both historically and day over day. We're taking all of the bank's payload and ingesting that into the platform. But in addition to that, we're also applying a business definition. We're categorizing in an automated way. And we have rules that we start out with. Customers evolve those rules, but we're applying a business definition to every single transaction so that there's enough, the data is enriched enough for the machine learning and to recognize patterns and be able to produce insight. And it's also helpful because this can often be an iterative process with customers. But as points out, if you have enough data, you don't have to wait for the pool to fill up. You can sort of work through your data relatively quick in order to produce the sort of predictions that you're looking to have using your business definitions. All of these transactions that come in, just as a quick example, everything just has these business rules associated with them, super simple. Whatever this criteria is, I want you to do this. Transactions, we also allow users to say, hey, there's some transactions we think are extraordinary, so we want them to be excluded from the forecasting models or not. So all of that stuff goes into producing a view like this, where all the activity is enriched in some way, and also can then predict or produce the predictions going forward. Before I jump in and sort of talk through some of the analytics of the report, I mean, this is a view where I'm, in a very simplistic sense, looking at by entity. I can choose the entities that I want to see. I can see all entities. I can see it in functional currency or show the entire organization's activity in USD and see what is the net change. But before I jump in to show you some of the analytics that you're able to get from organizing this data and generating the predictions, add anything you would want to add relative to like that idea of putting a business definition around transactions with multiple categories.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point, Randy, and it's something that we really want all the attendees to understand on our approach and transaction categorization. Most, I'd say, treasury technology platforms have the idea of transaction categorization. The way we approached it is we look at it as a hierarchy, and we start out at the top level with cash flow class, and that really aligns to the statement of cash flows, because at the end of the day, every transaction hitting a bank account or a investment custody account has to be categorized as either operating, financing, or investing cash flow. That's the statement of cash flows. And then underneath of that, then we go to cash flow type. So what's your major type? It could be accounts payable, accounts receivable, payroll, intercompany, et cetera. Your cash flow subtype. So if you want to break down your accounts payable or your accounts receivable by supplier or customer, or break down your payroll by, say, benefits versus payroll tax versus net payroll, being able to see that hierarchy, and then also assigning the GL account that transaction posts to in the ERP system, because we recognize and appreciate that every transaction ultimately has to be reconciled in the ERP. So how do you bring everybody together, treasury, the controllership function, to leverage this really important and valuable banking data to drive not only your historical actuals on a direct cash flow basis, but then your forecast.
Perfect. Thanks, Ed. And I think I would just go through a little bit when we look at this view like this of, in this case, an organization, an entity in their functional currency, we can switch to different entities. We're seeing a combination of the actuals and forecasts. And to Ty's point, we're quite happy to collaborate with organizations where we'll produce predictions, but we find that they also have their own forecasts that they want to have in the system and frequently want to benchmark and compare those two. So this solution is, by its nature, generating these predicted forecasts based on how we've enriched the data. But it doesn't mean that customers can't say, hey, I want to have my own forecast that I want to put into the system. And here I'm able to see, here's the forecast that I want to be putting into the system here. And here's the forecast, for example, for bank fees that I'm asking the platform to predict for me. but that's something that is configurable for customers. So we find frequently they're wanting us to predict certain strips of cash flows, or at least show what those strips of cash flows might look like compared to how they forecast things. But also they'll have their own forecast that they want to bring to the model. So both of those are available. The idea is that in getting all of this data and even to Ty's point, automating it, right? So you're not working in a spreadsheet. You have a central source of information here that you can report on. You can see your actuals. You can see your forecasts regardless of where they come from. You can start to automate the ability to generate some insight. So you're able to see, in this case, and I'll maybe simplify it a little bit and just look at a certain transaction types. What are the variances actually for my accounts payable for this particular entity, month over month? So what did I forecast, or what did Treasury 4 predict versus what actually happened in any one month? So it allows us to build out a scorecard for our customers to say, this is what you predicted, or this is what we predicted, and this is what actually happened at a transaction level. But also you can do it, what we find is helpful, and maybe I'll clear this out a little bit. Do this at an organizational level, meaning how can we better track across the organization how, relatively speaking, well each of our entities, their forecasts that either they have supplied or we're predicting, or a combination of those, how well that those forecasts compare, at least for these transaction types. That can filter it out and say, really want to just look at an organization, how are we doing just for accounts receivable across the organization? And I can see by entity which ones are tracking the closest to what we have forecast or what they have forecast in the system. So there's the ability to see some reporting or scorecarding, both at a transactional level, how we've enriched the data, and also at an entity level. And really what we're trying to get to is the ability to, and we're still evolving how this would look for customers, but how do we visualize the things that they want to look at? How do we want to visualize the exceptions to what they're expecting to happen? So in a visual like this, I'm able to see month over month what actually has happened this month. Who's the highest variance month over month? What are the top 5 variances for whatever the period of time that I'm looking at? From a transaction level, it looks like Australia's AR was the biggest offender for that period of time. Same thing for entities. We can track the entities. Which ones do we really want to be looking at? So the idea, I'm sorry, bad way of doing this. Let me filter this a little more nuance here. Across all of the transactions in the system, who's doing the best, who's doing the worst, and it's data that allows us to interact and see or compare and benchmark how are the forecasts that we predict or we bring into the system compared to the actuals. I'll touch on one thing, which would be a good place, Ty, maybe to jump in here, is this idea of having a dashboard to identify the exceptions. What do we actually want to be looking at or investigating? There is also the ability to, if we facilitate, and maybe a better way to show this is maybe we do certain transaction type, facilitate a customer's ability to compare what's actually happened. So these are all of for accounts receivable across the organization, all of the actuals versus maybe forecasts they have brought on versus predictions that we've made. So there's a way to actually do that sort of comparison. Something you could speak to a little bit, Ty, in terms of.
Yeah, totally. So those top 5 variances are really where we see people drilling in and doing that mixing and matching of different algorithms. There are some cases where we kind of know what model is going to do better. If you have a lot of data, machine learning is going to do really well. If you don't have very much, something like a rolling average or a manual forecast makes more sense. And data that varies a lot is going to do well with machine learning. So you can kind of start to work through those variances and tune the forecast to match exactly what you would want it to match. And in this view and in all of our reporting, we actually have the ability to make changes to the report as a user. So you can go in here and customize and bring up different views. You can change stuff to your brand colors.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to challenge Randy a little bit and make him do things on the fly.
Here we go, Ty.
So if you'll click that explore button, that would be lovely.
Be so very specific.
Yeah, So let's click on that line chart right there. And then into the line chart.
Oh,
Yeah, you're good.
don't it?
And then will you just bring type into Trellis? So let's say you're going through and you're trying to figure out what models you want to use for different types. You can go into here, and if Randy scrolls
Did I do it right?
down, yeah, you're good. Uh, so we can have specific types in there so you can go look at every single level which models you would want to have. Ed, do you want to talk to how the customization of reports is helping customers?
Yeah, it's so at Treasury 4, one of our foundational beliefs is that all data should be available for reporting and analytics by customers. So we build, and from an architecture perspective, each customer of Treasury 4 has their own dedicated SQL database, and then we provision a workspace, a corresponding workspace in Snowflake, and replicate our customer data to that, and then make it available through our reporting platform here. So that you can get in and work with all the data that's in the system, not just, and I think it's an important point here that we should touch on, not just the data that's being captured in the Treasury 4 application, but you do have the ability to use what are called input tables to bring non-platform data in to supplement your reporting and analytics. And I think that has been, it's been really fun to see a lot of our customers do creative capabilities with those input tables. We've had customers track their share repurchase programs. They've tracked some of their FP&A forecasts through input tables. And so really making that extensible. The other thing that's been really fun to see when we think about just the overall data platform is that we have customers that take their data that we're putting into Snowflake, and they bring that all the way into their internal corporate data warehouse built on Snowflake. So we're seeing this kind of flow of data coming from the banks, other inputs coming into the platform, flowing out to reporting, input tables, and then even that data flowing into the corporate zone data platform. So we fundamentally believe that all of your data should be available for your use securely so that you can build the analytics and drive the insights for your organization.
And not only that, but you should be able to distribute your own data. So if you want to be in the system and set up scheduled emails to send your forecast to your CFO every week, or if you want a notification if you're forecasted to go below zero in an account to tell you to move funds, that's all possible within this.
Important point. Randy, would you mind touching on kind of when we think about additional data beyond the bank statement data? I know we've talked about getting as much history as possible, but thinking about other transactional flows like maybe positive pay files or EFT payment files or debt schedules, and how we think about that from a projected and forecasted transaction perspective.
Yeah, sorry. I did a poor job of characterizing like forecasting because I think that's a good way of, it's good nuance. I mean, certainly sort of the sexier, exciting part is saying, hey, we have a lot of banking data that we've enriched and we can predict forecasts, or we can let customers bring in their own forecast from FP&A. But definitely part of what we see customers doing as well is having, I think what we'll term is like projected items. So you're going to have items that you project are going to happen on Thursday or next Tuesday or every other Tuesday for payroll. So having those projected items in the system in a recurring way for debt schedules, whatever, become part of or can become part of the synthesizing what actually, when we talk about forecasting, I mean, some of the things that we're looking at with the visuals in terms of trying to generate analytics, maybe the simplest question that customers are trying to ask is, if I look at any one entity, what are my funding needs going to be in the future? So all of those projected items need to be a part of this forecast. And that's even, I think, when we talk about setting up forecasts, we say, what is it that you actually want to be including in your forecast? Is it a projected item, or is it something we should be predicting based on what's happened in the past?
Great, thank you. I think we'll switch gears here a little bit and I'll read out a couple of the questions that have come in from attendees. So one of the questions is, what is a time horizon of the forecast, daily, weekly, monthly, annually? Maybe Ty, you could touch on that.
Yeah. So we have 13-week, which is going to be weekly, but of course you can put it in the hierarchy like it is here to look at it quarterly or monthly. We also have a 12-month forecast, which is going to forecast month by month.
Great, thank you. Maybe you could take the next one. So the question is, are the machine learning forecasts iterative? Meaning, are they adjusting based on the previous forecast variance?
Yeah, so that's actually how machines learn, is they're going to go train on past data and then compare what happened to determine what they're going to predict the next time. So as part of the training process of these models, they're going to try predicting past things and then see how far off they are and use that to determine their forecast.
Great. Randy, maybe kind of going back to the data theme and other data sets, question is, how do we think about ERP data? Does it have to be loaded in a special format to feed into the forecasting model? So maybe you could touch on how we bring in external data.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think we're agnostic. It just needs to be in a structured format for us to ingest. And we have, in some cases, customers who will ask for direct connections to an ERP, like an API connection. But even the connection method, we're agnostic to. It can just be a flat file movement, publishing of files that are structured in some way. And then we'll parse and bring those into the system. The one thing I think that is interesting that we're exploring for the first time, because I think of the tools in terms of reporting and the machine learning, is saying, we're hearing from customers say, it's great that you're predicting what's happened in the future based on the banking statements, but can you take my ERP history and use that to generate predictions in the future at a level maybe like, great, thanks for getting my AAR, but now I want to see it at a supplier level. I actually want to see it at a more detailed, more granular level. And that's, I think, something that we're starting to explore with customers and the tools themselves, is that you can take not just ERP data that you project into the future, but I think there's a lot of utility for bringing in that history and using that to train the model, if I'm saying that right, Ty.
You are.
Cool. All right. I'm relieved.
Yeah. So one of the questions here is the data set only based on bank statement data only, and just to clarify the answer is no. You can bring in ERP data all the way down to the invoice level, but other data sets. So one of the things that we're building out right now for those is an investment accounting interface where we're bringing in certain data and reports on a daily basis to show your holdings in your investment portfolio, and then additionally the cash flows from those investments. So coupon payments, maturities, and then now being able to layer that into the forecast in addition to kind of your operating activity that most organizations are focused on, with a lot of that data being in the ERP system. One question here that I'll just answer is, are we able to implement our solution in another language other than English? And the answer right now is no. We're English oriented, but that is something we're evaluating as part of our roadmap.
And sorry, I think one of the questions had been, and I think it's it's a good question, and a normal thing that will come up is the idea of can you adjust the forecast? Can you make an adjustment to one forecast, strips the forecast? And the answer is yeah, for sure. You're able to make those updates on the fly and interact with your forecast, which is what we see a tool like this our customers are starting to use and moving just more concretely from an Excel spreadsheet where they're really manually plugging in all this data, manually updating it, to having a single spreadsheet that different users maybe can interact with. And then they can not just generate those sort of insights, but even do some of the scenario analysis on what happens if you shift some of these things.
One of the questions here related to historical data, how much historical data is needed to run the forecast. I would just say the more the better. And, I would just say the more the better. And, we've said 2 years. If you had 10 years worth of bank statement data that we could get access to and import it, we would be happy to do that. But Ty, please jump in on that.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons that we do the mix and match modeling is if you don't have a lot of historical data, the machine learning is not going to do a good job. So that's one of the cases where you would use a rolling average. And Randy showed that if you click on enter forecasts, I think, or settings, there's the option to pick what model we're using. So if there's less than 13 weeks of data, we're not going to do an ML model. It's going to default to a rolling average. But you can also change that if you would like to. But by default, if there's not enough data, we'll use a rolling average.
I think that's a really good point. That's one of the questions that I kind of see here is which are the machine learning model, the question is which are the machine learning models used for forecasting? But I think that to kind of the way I'm reading it is, can you mix and match machine learning and rolling average for the different cash flow types, which you just showed us? Yes.
Yep.
You can mix and match and I think compare, right? So I think that's what's been interesting is you can see like what for some customers they already have maybe forecasts and it's allowing to sort of benchmark and validate. I also think just selfishly from working with customers directly, it's definitely been it's transformed sort of how we're able to work because generally speaking, forecasting would be something you would wait months to do with a customer because you did need to fill the pool with water. But like for us, we really are able to get enough history in there to generate seasonality, any sort of analysis within a couple of weeks, which drives the conversation with the customer to say, how should we be categorizing? What categories should we use? And how enriched do you want the data to be in order to produce the sort of forecasts or reporting you want to see? But those are discussions you really can't have without having enough data to work from. So that's been really helpful, both with banks where customers will say, I've got 3 years of history in a spreadsheet and load it in and off you go.
Back to the time buckets here. One of the questions is, can we also do we have a daily view? So we mentioned weekly, monthly, quarterly. How about a daily view?
You definitely could. It might be.
We could. Yeah.
Yeah, just a dimension there. Another question, and maybe Ty, you can touch on this. How do we mix projected and forecasted transactions with the machine learning generated forecasts?
Yeah, so there's kind of 4 options here. If you have a projected item with a historical date that has not been reconciled, then it's going to be included in the training data for the model. If it is after today, if it's in the future and is unreconciled, then we're going to concatenate it with our forecast. But you do have that button of ignore in forecast reports if you're worried about having duplicates. But those projected and forecasted items really shine for the future when it's kind of large one-time transactions that are going to happen. So any anomalies that are going to happen, you can exclude from the forecast report to train on, and then you can add them in to the future to concatenate on top.
Great. One of the questions, I'll take this one. The question is, can you track investments manually as well? And the answer is yes. You can, if you have market investments, whether it's money markets or fixed income or other investments that you want to track, we have automated file feeds from custodian banks, brokerage firms, money market portals. You also have the ability to manually input through our user interface investment holdings and transactions, or upload them through a standard CSV import. So that is all available. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we are building an investment accounting view. Not all customers have an investment accounting platform, especially if they're just principally using money markets. But we can bring in any of that underlying investment data, and not only the holdings records, but the transaction records. And
I would just add real quick that I was going to say, sorry, the same is true. Sorry to jump in. It's just for the banking data as well. I mean, it's not ideally banks are automated and connected, but they don't have to be in some cases just for logistics or volume reasons. So you're able to manually import your own banking data as well and use that.
Yep. Good point, Randy. Very good point there. One question came in: can scenarios be created? For example, an expected 10% increase in sales or a rise in raw material costs.
Yeah, so that's what we would use input tables for, like Randy mentioned, so you can do direct transformations and formulas on top of any of the data. And if you don't want to write your own formulas, we do have an AI formula builder, so you can type in, like, I want to increase this by 10%, and it will go write that formula for you in the report.
Great, great. I know we're coming up on time here. I'm just looking in the questions. If anybody else wants to submit anything, we'd love to answer those. And I'm not sure if we're doing any verbal questions, Emily.
While we have some people submitting maybe some more Q&A, we could go ahead and maybe launch the poll question.
Sure.
Just so we can speak on that for a second. Perfect. Let me go ahead and share my screen again. All right, and then, oh, sorry, it started all the way from the beginning.
There is a new question if T4 has a payments module.
We do. It's called Payments 4. So guess the name. It's Payments 4. Yes, that was our newest module we introduced earlier this year. It's treasury payments, initially via API. And we are going to be expanding that to later this year, end of the year, to being able to support outbound payments via Swift. We're implementing Swift connectivity right now to support our customers, and then we'll continue to add more banking partners via API in Payments 4 as well. And I think that's a great question because we've talked a lot about categorization and categorization of banking data. One of the things that we built into Payments 4 is that when you do a payment, create a payment template or do a freeform payment, you can categorize with each payment with cash flow class, type, subtype, GL. That carries over as a projected transaction into cash 4, and then when it reconciles and matches against the reported transaction, we bring that whole data set together. So the idea is that you're categorizing your transactions up front in the payment lifecycle. Okay, poll questions.
Perfect. I'll go ahead and launch the poll question now. And our question is, where are you on the journey of using AI for cash forecasting? Are you A, exploring what's possible, B, piloting with internal data, C, actively using AI models, or D, no plans yet? So I went ahead and launched that. We almost have 50% participated, so go ahead and I'll give you guys 30 seconds to fill it out, and then I'll go ahead and share the results.
Great. So one other question that's come in is, what is the ideal size of a company that Treasury 4 is ideal for or good for? And I would say we have a great set of customers that range anywhere from $100 million in revenue, domestic only organization, to global multinationals that are multi-billion in revenue with hundreds of bank accounts and hundreds of legal entities. So we really have built out Treasury 4 from a practitioner perspective and really thinking about the scalability to support customers across different use cases, but also different complexity requirements. But we have customers, public companies, private companies, more industry agnostic.
Perfect. All right, I just ended the poll question. I'm going to share the results now, if you guys can see that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's great to see the 15% piloting with internal data. That's great. And I'm not surprised that there's just a lot of exploration. And I would just say, like, with I've been in treasury practitioner for over 20 years, extending beyond that for another 15 years in overall technology. And I've never seen a technology uh, come out and explode so quickly as AI has. I think it dwarfs the adoption of the internet in the kind of early and mid 90s. And so I think just everybody is out there really exploring what's possible. Randy and Ty, your thoughts?
Ty, you go
I'm
first
just
this
so
time.
happy people are
Yeah, yeah,
exploring. It's
yeah.
fun. AI is incredibly powerful, and I love that it's becoming more and more accessible.
Yeah, no, it's fun to have the opportunity to work with some of these tools to solve kind of the same old challenges that we've seen customers have over the years, is how to do more with less, right? Um, so yeah.
Great. Well, thanks, Emily, for doing the poll question there. And I think with that said, if I'm not seeing any other questions come in, and we're at time, so we really appreciate everybody attending today. If you have any questions, please reach out to Randy, Ty, myself, Emily, anybody on the Treasury 4 team. We are more than happy to answer questions and dig deeper into understanding your forecasting needs. Randy and Ty, anything you want to closing thoughts?
Thanks so much for joining us. Yeah, thank
Yeah.
you.
Great.
Yes, thank you all for joining us today. We hope this session, sparks some new ideas around how to build smarter, faster, and more scalable forecasting processes in Treasury. We'll be sending a follow-up email with a link to the full recording, along with any resources we covered today, to go ahead and explore how Treasury 4 can support your team with data-driven visibility and automation. Please visit us at treasury4.com. You can also go ahead and scan the QR code that you see right here on the screen. And I just want to thank you all again, and we look forward to staying connected and continuing the conversation. And thank you to my lovely speakers. You guys are amazing.
Thank you, everyone.
You.
Have a great